On the 20th of February, 1943, on Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands, a blood-curdling symphony of screams shattered the morning calm. 800 Imperial Japanese Army soldiers surged forth from the dense jungle, launching a final desperate banzai attack. Sergeant James McKinley, his hands firm around his standard-issue M1 Garand rifle, watched as the enemy closed the gap. 50 yards, 40, then 30. The rifle, which had reigned supreme on the battlefields of Europe, suddenly felt inadequate in the close-quarters combat. Its reloading speed felt too slow, its effective range too limited for the onslaught that was bearing down on them. Every Marine was acutely aware of the terrifying mathematics of such an assault. A banzai charge could advance at a speed of 10 miles per hour, and once the enemy breached the defensive line, survival became a matter of sheer luck rather than skill or strategy. However, on that fateful morning, McKinley wasn't holding his M1 Garand. Slung across his back was a weapon that the Marine Corps had almost entirely dismissed, a World War I-era trench gun deemed hopelessly obsolete for the requirements of modern warfare by military experts. This 12-gauge pump-action shotgun hadn't seen significant action since the muddy trenches of France a quarter of a century prior. As the Japanese soldiers crashed through the last vestiges of vegetation, McKinley raised the forgotten relic of the Great War. The events that unfolded would compel the Marine Corps to completely rethink their jungle warfare doctrines. McKinley harbored considerable doubts about the trench gun from the moment it had been thrust into his hands 3 weeks earlier. The weapon felt unnatural and unfamiliar, after months of relying on the M1 Garand's superior precision and extended range. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson had made the decision to distribute the shotguns after a thorough review of casualty reports from previous banzai encounters. But McKinley was not alone in his reservations. The pump-action mechanism felt cumbersome and clunky compared to the smooth and refined operation of their rifles, and the limited ammunition capacity, a mere 5 shells compared to the Garand's 8-round clip, felt like a significant reduction in firepower. Stay with us to watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The morning of February 20th began much like any other on Guadalcanal. McKinley's squad had established a defensive perimeter along a ridge that overlooked a narrow valley, choked with towering mahogany trees and dense undergrowth. The humidity hung heavy in the air, like a damp, suffocating blanket, and the familiar sounds of the jungle, the incessant chattering of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the distant rumble of artillery fire created a deceptive illusion of normalcy. Private Harrison sat nearby, meticulously cleaning his assigned trench gun with the same unwavering attention to detail that he usually reserved for his rifle. The 19-year-old from Ohio had adapted to the shotgun more quickly than most of his comrades, but even he couldn't shake the nagging question of whether 5 shells would be sufficient when the inevitable Japanese assault came. The first telltale sign of impending danger, as always, was the sudden and eerie silence. The birds ceased their singing. The insects fell quiet. McKinley had learned to interpret these subtle cues during his 8 long months in the Pacific, and he immediately signaled his men to prepare for imminent contact. Corporal Daniels, positioned 20 yards to the left, raised his hand in acknowledgement and chambered a round in his trench gun. The metallic sound of the pump action seemed unnaturally loud and jarring in the sudden, oppressive stillness. Through his binoculars, McKinley spotted movement in the tree line, approximately 400 yards down the slope. Individual figures emerged from the shadows. Japanese soldiers moving with the disciplined precision that invariably preceded every banzai charge. He began to count them. 50, then 70, then over 100. The enemy formation spread across a front of nearly 200 yards, significantly wider than any charge his squad had previously encountered. Each soldier carried the standard-issue Arisaka rifle, complete with a fixed bayonet, and their synchronized movements strongly suggested that this would be one of those meticulously coordinated assaults that had repeatedly breached American lines throughout the Solomon Islands campaign. McKinley's radio crackled with urgent reports from adjacent positions. Similar formations were assembling along the entire length of the ridgeline, indicating a coordinated attack involving at least 800 Japanese soldiers. The sheer numbers alone caused his stomach to churn with anxiety. His 12-man squad would soon be facing approximately 60 charging enemies, odds that might have been manageable with clear fields of fire and an adequate supply of ammunition. However, the dense jungle vegetation, severely limited visibility to less than 50 yards in most directions, and the trench guns carried only 25 rounds per man compared to the 80 rounds typically issued for the standard M1 rifles. The charge commenced with the traditional battle cry that had instilled terror in American forces since the attack on Pearl Harbor. 800 voices screaming in unison created a deafening roar that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. McKinley watched through his field glasses as the Japanese formation surged forward, advancing at the practiced pace that would bring them within effective range in less than 2 minutes. The enemy soldiers ran in loose formations, skillfully weaving between trees and utilizing the terrain to concentrate their approach. Their training was evident as they maintained spacing to prevent concentrated fire from disrupting their momentum, and they moved with the desperate energy of men who fully expected to die in the process. Harrison called out the range estimates as the charge rapidly closed the distance. 300 yards and closing fast, Sergeant. The private's voice maintained a steady professionalism despite his youth, a testament to the rapid maturation that combat invariably demanded. McKinley could now make out individual faces. Young men not much older than Harrison, their expressions contorted with the fanatical determination that made banzai charges so effective against unprepared defenders. These weren't simply desperate last stands. They were carefully calculated tactical decisions designed to exploit American weaknesses in close-quarters combat. At 200 yards, McKinley gave the order to prepare for engagement. His men scrambled into position behind fallen logs and natural depressions, each Marine checking his weapon one final time. The trench guns felt woefully inadequate compared to the approaching tide of fixed bayonets and screaming voices. McKinley had witnessed banzai charges before, and he knew that the critical moment would arrive when the enemy reached the 50-yard mark. That was the distance at which rifle accuracy became virtually irrelevant, and survival depended on the ability to deliver rapid, devastating firepower. Daniels strategically placed himself at a constricted locale, where the land naturally converged. forcing the approaching adversaries into a narrow pathway less than 30 yards across. This seasoned corporal fully grasped the tactical edge provided by this location, yet he also realized that he would quickly become a prime target for intense enemy fire once the battle commenced. His trench shotgun was loaded with 5 shells, each containing 9 pellets, a total of 45 projectiles poised to scatter in a cone shape roughly 10 feet wide at close quarters. Suddenly, the arithmetic of combat seemed more promising than it had with his rifle. As the assault drew nearer, reaching 100 yards, McKinley could discern individual voices amidst the collective war cries. Japanese soldiers stumbled over tree roots and crashed through the dense undergrowth, yet their forward drive remained unbroken. Some carried satchel charges designed to obliterate American positions, while others brandished traditional swords alongside their rifles. The psychological impact was immediate and deliberate. Several of McKinley's newer Marines visibly displayed signs of panic, their hands trembling as they clutched unfamiliar shotguns. At 75 yards, the enemy formation began to consolidate as the jungle terrain constrained them into predictable paths. McKinley recognized that the thick vegetation, which had initially seemed a disadvantage, was actually working to his advantage. The Japanese soldiers could only advance along specific routes, creating natural kill zones that his trench shotguns could dominate. He adjusted his positioning orders, directing Harrison and 2 other Marines to guard the main approach, while Daniels secured the secondary route. "Stay with us, and we'll reveal the ultimate fate of this desperate battle. Your support in the form of likes and subscriptions is greatly appreciated." The final 50 yards evaporated in mere seconds. McKinley raised his trench shotgun and disengaged the safety, noticing the unfamiliar weight distribution compared to his rifle. The weapon that had seemed so antiquated during training was about to face its ultimate test against an enemy tactic that had breached American defenses across the Pacific. Everything he had learned about conventional warfare was about to prove inadequate, and his survival would hinge entirely on a forgotten relic from the trenches of France. The initial shot shattered McKinley's preconceived notions about modern warfare. As the lead Japanese soldier burst through the undergrowth at 40 yards, McKinley squeezed the trigger of his trench shotgun. The 12-gauge shell unleashed 9 lead pellets in a spreading pattern that struck not only his intended target, but also 2 soldiers running alongside. All 3 men collapsed instantly, their charge thwarted by a weapon McKinley had dismissed as obsolete just moments before. The pump-action mechanism cycled smoothly despite the humidity, chambering a fresh shell faster than he could have reloaded his M1 Garand. Harrison unleashed a barrage from his position near the main trail, producing a sound unlike anything the Marines had previously experienced. The sharp crack of rifle fire was supplanted by the thunderous boom of shotguns, each blast reverberating through the jungle like artillery. The psychological impact on the charging Japanese soldiers was immediate and devastating. Men who had trained to endure rifle casualties found themselves confronting a wall of scattered projectiles that rendered individual accuracy irrelevant. Harrison's second shot struck 4 soldiers in a cluster, the pellets scattering across a cone nearly 15 feet wide at a 30-yard range. The jungle environment that had stymied American forces throughout the Pacific Campaign suddenly became their greatest tactical asset. Dense vegetation that blocked rifle bullets at long range posed no obstacle to shotgun pellets at close quarters. Mahogany branches that deflected aimed shots merely scattered the spreading patterns of buckshot, creating ricochet effects that struck Japanese soldiers from unexpected angles. McKinley watched in astonishment as his third shot penetrated a screen of leaves and vines that would have completely stopped his rifle round, striking two enemies he could barely see through the foliage. Oh, Daniels had strategically positioned himself at the secondary approach, where the terrain formed a natural funnel. His initial engagement occurred when 6 Japanese soldiers rounded a cluster of fallen trees at 25 yards. The veteran corporal fired twice in rapid succession, his pump-action shotgun cycling with practiced precision. 12 shells had been loaded with double buckshot, each pellet roughly the diameter of a .38 caliber bullet. At close range, the effect was catastrophic. The narrow confines of the jungle trail concentrated his fire pattern, and all 6 attackers fell within seconds. The speed of engagement fundamentally altered the nature of combat. McKinley's previous battles had involved careful aim, breath control, and precise trigger squeeze at ranges exceeding 100 yards. The trench shotgun eliminated those requirements entirely. At distances under 50 yards, pointing became more crucial than aiming, and rapid fire mattered more than accuracy. His fourth shot was fired instinctively at a muzzle flash glimpsed through dense undergrowth. The spreading pellets found their target despite vegetation that would have made rifle fire impossible. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson had insisted on distributing 25 shells per man, a decision that seemed wasteful during the initial briefings. McKinley now understood the tactical reasoning. Each shotgun shell contained multiple projectiles, effectively multiplying the firepower of every Marine. His 5-round magazine capacity translated to 45 individual projectiles, comparable to an entire 8-round rifle clip. The additional ammunition allowed sustained engagement without the careful conservation required for rifle cartridges. Harrison discovered another advantage during his 6th shot. A Japanese soldier had sought cover behind a tree trunk that would have provided complete protection from rifle fire. The spreading pattern of buckshot curved around the obstacle, striking the enemy from angles that direct fire could never achieve. The 19-year-old private began using this technique deliberately, firing at angles that sent pellets ricocheting through the jungle canopy to strike targets in seemingly impossible positions. The oppressive humidity that relentlessly plagued American equipment throughout the Solomon Islands campaign had a peculiar effect on the trench guns, quite different from what was expected. While the barrels of rifles demanded constant cleaning to maintain any semblance of accuracy, the shotgun's effectiveness actually seemed to flourish in the thick, moisture-laden air. The same atmospheric conditions that would cause rifle bullets to scatter uselessly at long range appeared to have a negligible impact on the buckshot patterns unleashed at close quarters. McKinley, for instance, discovered that his weapon was functioning with far greater reliability than his M1 Garand had during similar conditions on previous patrols, a rather unexpected turn of events. Corporal Daniels, in his 3 weeks since being issued the weapon, had trained extensively with the pump-action mechanism. His muscle memory had now developed to the point where he could cycle shells almost without conscious thought, maintaining a near-continuous stream of fire while moving between defensive positions. The veteran Marine had calculated that his sustained rate of fire was approaching 3 rounds per minute, a pace significantly faster than bolt-action rifles, and even competitive with some semi-automatic weapons. But perhaps more importantly, each round delivered a truly devastating effect at the close ranges where jungle combat invariably occurred, making it a formidable weapon in such environments. The unique sound signature of the shotguns created a palpable sense of confusion among the Japanese forces, who were accustomed to the distinctive reports of American rifles. McKinley could clearly hear shouted commands echoing within the enemy formation, but the orders seemed disjointed and uncertain, lacking their usual crispness. The attacking soldiers had undergone extensive training to recognize and respond to the sound of M1 Garand fire, using the distinctive ejection of the 8-round clip as a cue to time their advances. The continuous boom of the shotguns, however, completely disrupted their tactical timing and effectively eliminated the audio cues that had previously coordinated their assaults. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. By his 10th shot, McKinley began to realize that the weapon he had initially accepted with reluctance was, in fact, revolutionizing close-quarters combat. The trench gun's effectiveness in the challenging jungle conditions far exceeded even the most optimistic predictions made by Marine Corps analysts. The dense vegetation, which typically limited rifle engagement ranges to under 50 yards, created an almost perfect environment for the employment of shotguns. The weapon, which at first glance seemed primitive when compared to modern rifles, was actually ideally suited for the very environment where American forces were fighting their most desperate and critical battles. Harrison, having expended 15 rounds, quickly discovered that reloading under actual combat conditions required entirely different techniques than those used for rifle ammunition. Shotgun shells were undeniably larger and more awkward to handle, but the reloading process itself was actually simpler than managing the 8-round clips of the M1 Garand. The private quickly developed a specific rhythm of firing 3 shots, then topping off the magazine with 2 shells, and then continuing the engagement. This technique allowed him to maintain a continuous stream of firepower while ensuring that his weapon never ran completely empty during those critical and decisive moments. The banzai charge, which had seemed so overwhelming at 400 yards, was now fragmenting under the concentrated shotgun fire. Individual Japanese soldiers continued to advance with fanatical determination, but their previously coordinated formation had dissolved into scattered groups, struggling through increasingly deadly terrain. McKinley's squad had made a remarkable discovery: that the conventional wisdom regarding infantry weapons was, in fact, wrong. In the dense and unforgiving jungles of the Pacific, the seemingly outdated trench gun had become the most effective tool for stopping enemy assaults, effectively transforming desperate last stands into controlled and decisive defensive victories. The aftermath of the February 20th engagement provided Lieutenant Colonel Pearson with invaluable data that challenged every preconceived assumption about infantry weapon effectiveness in jungle warfare. McKinley's after-action report documented 23 confirmed enemy casualties from a 12-man squad armed with trench guns, a stark contrast to the average banzai charge results of 4 to 6 casualties per squad using standard rifles. The engagement duration lasted just 3 minutes and 40 seconds from the initial contact to the enemy's eventual withdrawal, significantly shorter than the 8 to 12-minute firefights that were typical of rifle-based defenses. Most remarkably, the Marine casualties totaled 0 dead and only 2 lightly wounded, a complete reversal of the casualty ratios that had plagued American forces throughout the Solomon Islands campaign. Pearson immediately recognized the profound tactical implications of these numbers. Standard Marine doctrine dictated that rifle fire should commence at the maximum effective range, typically 200 to 300 yards in open terrain. However, jungle conditions reduced this range to 50 yards or less, creating engagement windows of just 15 to 20 seconds before enemy forces reached American positions. The M1 Garand's 8-round capacity allowed experienced Marines to fire 6 to 7 aimed shots during this critical period, assuming perfect conditions and no mechanical failures. McKinley's squad, however, had demonstrated that the trench guns could deliver an impressive 20 to 25 effective shots per man during the same time frame, with each shot producing multiple projectile impacts. The operational analysis extended far beyond simple firepower calculations. Pearson's staff meticulously reviewed ammunition consumption data from previous engagements, discovering that rifle-equipped squads typically expended 60 to 80 rounds per confirmed enemy casualty during banzai charge encounters. McKinley's squad, on the other hand, had achieved a ratio of just 12 shotgun shells per casualty, with each shell containing 9 pellets. This effective ammunition-to-target ratio represented a dramatic improvement, particularly significant given the logistical challenges of resupplying forward positions in the dense and treacherous jungle terrain. Corporal Daniels provided crucial insights into the weapon's performance under the extreme stress of combat. His experience with both rifles and shotguns during the same engagement allowed for a direct comparison of ergonomic factors. The pump-action mechanism proved to be more intuitive under extreme pressure than bolt manipulation or clip changes. Daniels reported that his muscle memory adapted to the shotgun's operation within the first 10 rounds, while rifle proficiency had required months of dedicated training to achieve similar levels of reliability. The weapon's operation remained remarkably consistent, despite the adrenaline surge and the fine motor skill degradation that inevitably accompanied close combat. Medical analyses derived from the conflict brought to light further benefits of deploying shotguns. Japanese combatants, even when struck by rifle rounds, often retained the capacity to continue their assault for a short duration, frequently long enough to reach American lines with bayonets or explosives. Conversely, shotgun-inflicted injuries resulted in immediate incapacitation in the vast majority, 93% of documented instances. Naval medical personnel attributed this to the multiple wound channels created by the dispersed shot, which more effectively disrupted the nervous system compared to single bullet wounds. Harrison's comprehensive account of reloading practices under fire offered crucial tactical insights that influenced subsequent training regimens. The private had successfully reloaded his weapon 7 times during the battle, maintaining a constant barrage by synchronizing his ammunition changes with nearby Marines. His method of loading 2 shells after every 3 shots prevented the weapon from being completely empty while maximizing continuous firepower. This strategy proved superior to the conventional method of emptying the weapon before reloading, particularly when confronting human wave attacks that offered no lull in combat. The psychological impact of shotgun fire emerged as an unanticipated force multiplier during post-battle interrogations of captured Japanese soldiers. Detainees reported that the distinct sound of the pump action mechanism instilled panic within their ranks, as the weapon was associated with American police and gangster films that had been popular in Japan before the war. The deafening blast of 12-gauge shells at close quarters produced auditory shock effects that disrupted communication and coordination within attacking formations. Numerous prisoners described the experience as encountering thunder guns that seemed to fire continuously without reloading. Pearson's analysis of the terrain revealed why the trench gun was so effective in the Pacific conditions. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Let us know in the comments where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The dense foliage prevalent in most battle zones created natural funnels that concentrated attacking forces into predictable paths. Shotgun patterns, which expanded to roughly 10 feet in diameter at 30 yards, perfectly aligned with these terrain-defined kill zones. The weapon's effectiveness actually increased in jungle environments, contrary to traditional beliefs that favored rifle accuracy and range. Jungle warfare had inadvertently created an ideal environment for shotgun deployment, despite the weapons being designed for trench warfare 25 years prior. The maintenance demands of trench guns in tropical conditions surprised both Marines and their equipment specialists. While rifle barrels required daily cleaning to maintain accuracy, shotgun performance remained consistent despite accumulated fouling. The larger bore diameter and lower pressures generated by 12-gauge ammunition proved more resistant to humidity, mud, and debris that plagued smaller caliber weapons. Harrison reported that his weapon functioned reliably throughout the engagement, even after being submerged in muddy water during the initial positioning phase. The supply chain implications of widespread trench gun adoption presented both challenges and opportunities. 12-gauge ammunition was significantly heavier than rifle cartridges, reducing the number of rounds each Marine could carry. However, the improved effectiveness per round partially offset this disadvantage. Pearson calculated that a Marine carrying 25 shotgun shells possessed equivalent firepower to a rifleman with 40 to 50 rounds, while the total ammunition load weighed approximately the same. The reduced ammunition requirements also simplified logistics for units operating far from established supply lines. Training protocols required fundamental revision to incorporate shotgun tactics into Marine doctrine. Traditional marksmanship emphasized precision, breath control, and single-shot accuracy at extended ranges. Shotgun employment demanded rapid target acquisition, instinctive pointing, and a sustained rate of fire at close quarters. Daniels volunteered to develop training programs that could prepare Marines for this tactical shift within the abbreviated time frames available between combat operations. Intelligence reports from captured documents revealed that Japanese commanders had begun adapting their banzai charge tactics to counter American rifle fire. Enemy formations had learned to exploit the 8-round capacity limitation of M1 rifles, timing their final rushes to coincide with reloading cycles. The continuous fire capability of pump-action shotguns eliminated this tactical advantage, forcing Japanese forces to develop entirely new approaches to close assault operations. By March 1st, Pearson had compiled sufficient data to recommend immediate expansion of trench gun distribution throughout the 1st Marine Division. His report to higher headquarters included detailed ammunition consumption analyses, casualty ratio improvements, and tactical employment recommendations. The weapon that military planners had considered obsolete for modern warfare had proven itself the most effective tool for stopping enemy charges under jungle conditions, fundamentally altering the tactical balance in favor of defending American forces. The monsoon rains that began on March 15th exposed the first serious weakness in the trench gun's jungle performance. McKinley discovered this during a routine patrol when his weapon failed to eject a spent shell, leaving him temporarily defenseless. While Japanese snipers targeted his position, the pump action mechanism that had functioned flawlessly during the February engagement now struggled against the constant moisture that penetrated every seal and crevice. Within 48 hours of continuous rainfall, half the shotguns in his squad were experiencing intermittent malfunctions that threatened to negate their tactical advantage. Harrison found himself troubleshooting mechanical failures that had never appeared during training exercises. The steel components of the pump mechanism began showing signs of corrosion despite regular cleaning, and the wooden stock started swelling from moisture absorption. His weapon jammed twice during a night ambush on March 18th, forcing him to transition to his backup sidearm while enemy forces advanced within grenade range. The reliability that had made the trench gun so effective was proving vulnerable to environmental conditions that exceeded the weapon's original design parameters. Initial design parameters for the shotguns did not account for the harsh realities of the Pacific theater. Corporal Daniels, a resourceful Marine, took the initiative to implement field modifications, a deviation from standard Marine Corps maintenance protocols, but one born out of necessity for operational survival. With limited tools and spare parts salvaged from damaged weapons, he embarked on a mission to disassemble shotguns, meticulously identifying the components most susceptible to the pervasive humidity. The extractor mechanism emerged as the primary culprit, followed by the trigger group assembly and the magazine tube spring. Surprisingly, Daniels discovered that excessive lubrication, a common practice, exacerbated the problem by attracting debris and sand, which then clogged the delicate moving parts. The technical hurdles extended beyond the realm of mechanical reliability, impacting the ammunition's performance as well. Shotgun shells stored in the tropical environment displayed signs of degradation within a mere 2 weeks of the monsoon's arrival. The cardboard hulls, despite their wax coating, absorbed moisture, leading to inconsistent chamber pressure and erratic pellet patterns. McKinley's squad, for instance, experienced 3 catastrophic shell failures during a single engagement. One round produced only a muffled report, and the pellets barely traveled 15 yards. These ammunition failures occurred at the worst possible time, when reliable firepower was crucial for survival. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson found himself grappling with a tactical dilemma that threatened to undermine the entire trench gun program. Field reports pouring in from multiple units echoed similar reliability concerns, with malfunction rates soaring to 23% during extended operations in wet conditions. The very weapon that had revolutionized close-quarters combat was now proving unreliable precisely when Marines needed it most. Pearson's staff calculated that mechanical failures during enemy contact had already resulted in 4 Marine casualties that might have been prevented had the weapons functioned properly. Stay with us. as we continue to explore the challenges and adaptations surrounding the use of trench guns in the Pacific Theater. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analyses of military history and equipment. Where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts on the topic of adapting weapons to challenging environments? Share your comments below. The improvised solutions devised by experienced Marines like Daniels began to circulate through informal networks, bypassing official channels. The techniques for waterproofing pump mechanisms involve materials never intended for military use, such as beeswax, sourced from local communities, and petroleum products diverted from vehicle maintenance supplies. While these field expedients improved reliability, they also introduced new challenges related to weapon standardization and maintenance procedures. Each squad developed slightly different methods for keeping their shotguns operational, complicating centralized training and supply support efforts. McKinley's adherence to official maintenance procedures proved inadequate for the demanding jungle conditions. The standard cleaning kit, designed for rifle maintenance, lacked the necessary tools for shotgun mechanisms, and the prescribed lubricants attracted moisture instead of repelling it. His weapon required complete disassembly and cleaning after every patrol, a time-consuming process that left Marines vulnerable during periods when they should have been resting or preparing for upcoming operations. The maintenance burden was becoming a significant tactical liability. Harrison implemented a rotation system to ensure that at least half of his squad's weapons remained functional at any given time. Marines would alternate between two shotguns, allowing one weapon to dry while the other remained in service. This approach necessitated doubling the number of weapons carried by each unit, creating logistical challenges for patrols operating far from established bases. The added weight reduced ammunition capacity and mobility, partially negating the tactical advantages that had made trench guns so effective during initial engagements. The psychological impact of weapon malfunctions proved as significant as the mechanical problems themselves. Marines who had grown confident in their shotgun's stopping power now faced the possibility of equipment failure during critical moments. McKinley observed increased stress levels among his squad members, who began carrying additional backup weapons despite the added weight. The reliability issues were undermining the morale boost that had accompanied the trench gun's initial success against banzai charges. Ammunition supply problems further compounded the mechanical difficulties faced by shotgun-equipped units. The specialized nature of 12-gauge military ammunition meant that resupply operations required different logistics procedures than standard rifle cartridges. When shipments were delayed or damaged by weather, Marines found themselves rationing shells while enemy activity continued unabated. McKinley's squad operated with reduced ammunition loads for 6 days during late March, forcing them to restrict engagement ranges and avoid patrols that might lead to prolonged firefights. Daniels' unofficial role as the unit's technical expert expanded as other squads sought solutions to similar problems. The veteran corporal found himself conducting informal training sessions on field maintenance techniques, sharing knowledge that had never been codified in official manuals. His expertise became so valuable that Lieutenant Colonel Pearson began consulting him directly on equipment decisions, circumventing normal channels to access practical knowledge gained through combat experience. The environmental challenges confronting trench guns underscored broader issues with equipment adaptation for Pacific theater operations. Weapons designed for European conditions required extensive modification to function reliably in tropical climates. The humidity, temperature extremes, and corrosive salt air created problems that had not been anticipated during peacetime development and testing. McKinley's experience epitomized the adaptation challenges facing all American forces operating in unfamiliar environments. By the end of March, field reports indicated that properly maintained trench guns retained significant tactical advantages despite their reliability problems. Units that successfully adapted their maintenance procedures continued to achieve superior results against Japanese charges compared to rifle-equipped forces. However, the weapon's effectiveness now depended heavily on the technical competence of individual Marines rather than standardized procedures that could be applied universally. This created disparities in performance between different units based on the experience and ingenuity of their personnel. The crisis forced Marine Corps leadership to choose between abandoning a tactically superior weapon system or accepting the operational complications required to maintain it under combat conditions. Under combat conditions, the efficacy of McKinley's squad underscored that trench guns, when appropriately bolstered, could be a powerful asset. However, this advantage hinged on having ample resources and specialized knowledge, which weren't always accessible. The crucial balance between how well the weapon performed on the battlefield and how easy it was to keep supplied would ultimately determine if this largely forgotten weapon from World War I would continue its service with American troops in the Pacific Theater. The black volcanic sands of Iwo Jima presented unique obstacles, essentially turning the trench gun from a jungle warfare tool into an instrument of urban combat. With each step, McKinley's boots made a crunching sound across the coarse landscape as his squad moved towards the web of Japanese bunkers that dominated the island's core. The thick foliage, which had been a defining characteristic of Pacific battles for 2 years, was now replaced by a strange environment filled with sulfur springs, protruding rocks, and concrete fortifications that seemed to rise directly from the ground. The tactical strong points that had previously made shotguns so effective in jungle skirmishes now needed to be completely rethought within this novel setting. The initial signs of these changed conditions became apparent during the landing on February 19, 1945. Harrison struggled to maintain his weapon as volcanic ash managed to infiltrate every part, even with protective measures in place. These fine particles proved to be more damaging than the jungle's humidity, grinding against the moving parts and creating a gritty paste when mixed with lubricants. When Harrison attempted to pump the action after reaching the beach, he was met with a grinding sound, indicating likely damage to the extractor mechanism. The weapon that had endured months in tropical climates was now being compromised by an environment that no Marine had prepared for. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson's examination of Japanese defensive positions revealed why trench guns might be even more valuable on Iwo Jima than they had been in the jungle. The enemy had shifted away from banzai charge tactics, instead opting for fortified locations that funneled American attacks through narrow corridors barely wide enough for a single person. These underground passages and reinforced bunkers created engagement distances of only 5 to 15 yards, distances at which the shotgun's effectiveness would be at its peak. The weapon initially designed for trench warfare in France was about to confront conditions that were strikingly similar to its original purpose. Corporal Daniels spearheaded the first underground assault on March 2nd, when his squad was assigned to clear a tunnel complex housing approximately 30 Japanese defenders. The concrete passages were 6 feet high and 4 feet wide, dimensions that made maneuvering with rifles extremely difficult while favoring the compact design of pump-action shotguns. Daniels carried 40 rounds of double-aught buckshot, specifically chosen for its ability to penetrate in close quarters. Each shell contained 12 pellets, capable of breaching light armor at point-blank range. The confined spaces amplified every aspect of using a shotgun, both the advantages and the disadvantages. The deafening blast of 12-gauge shells within the concrete tunnels created acoustic shock waves that stunned enemy defenders and disrupted their coordination. Daniels noticed that Japanese soldiers often became disoriented after the initial shotgun blast, providing crucial seconds for American forces to advance. However, these same acoustic effects proved almost unbearable for the attacking Marines, necessitating changes to standard assault procedures to prevent hearing damage among friendly forces. McKinley discovered that clearing bunkers required a different ammunition selection than jungle encounters. Standard buckshot loads proved inadequate against the reinforced concrete and steel plate barriers that Japanese engineers had incorporated into their defensive positions. His squad started using specialized breaching rounds, loaded with hardened steel projectiles designed to penetrate fortified materials. These shells reduced the effective pellet count from 9 to 6 per round, but provided the necessary penetration to engage enemies hiding behind substantial cover. The psychological impact of using shotguns proved particularly effective in underground combat. Japanese defenders trapped in bunkers had no escape routes when American forces blocked tunnel entrances with concentrated fire. Harrison reported that enemy resistance often crumbled after the first few shotgun rounds, as defenders realized the futility of fighting in confined spaces against weapons that made individual marksmanship irrelevant. The claustrophobic environment that had favored Japanese defensive tactics was transformed into a killing zone where American firepower reigned supreme. Ammunition consumption rates during bunker operations surpassed all previous estimates. McKinley's squad expended an average of 60 rounds per cleared position, compared to 25 rounds per engagement during jungle operations. The increased consumption reflected both the intensity of close-quarters fighting and the need to maintain continuous, suppressive fire while advancing through interconnected tunnel systems. Supply lines that had struggled to maintain adequate shotgun ammunition in jungle conditions faced even greater challenges supporting bunker clearing operations. Daniels developed specialized tactics for navigating Japanese tunnel networks, incorporating lessons learned from both jungle warfare and urban combat principles. His approach emphasized rapid movement between firing positions, using shotgun patterns to clear multiple directions simultaneously. The veteran corporal discovered that ricocheting pellets in concrete passages often struck enemies who believed they had adequate cover, creating lethal effects that exceeded the weapon's design capabilities. The medical challenges of treating shotgun wounds in underground environments complicated evacuation procedures, and required changes to standard casualty care protocols. Navy corpsmen reported that blast effects in confined spaces created injuries unlike those seen in open terrain, with acoustic trauma becoming as significant as projectile wounds. The weapons that had proven so effective at stopping enemy attacks were also creating treatment challenges that strained medical resources. Harrison's time spent capturing strongly defended locations highlighted the critical need for synergy between diverse armament systems. While shotguns were highly effective in tight spaces, they lacked the range to subdue distant adversaries or breach robust fortifications. His unit pioneered integrated combat strategies, combining the precision of rifles with the close-quarters power of shotguns during final assaults. This approach amplified the strengths of each weapon while mitigating their inherent weaknesses. The volcanic terrain presented unique maintenance problems, distinct from, but as challenging as those found in jungle environments. The air's sulfurous compounds rapidly corroded metallic parts, while abrasive volcanic ash accelerated the wear of moving components. McKinley's firearm necessitated thorough cleaning after each mission, making replacement parts essential supplies that required priority distribution from support units. Intelligence revealed that Japanese commanders were modifying their tunnel defenses to specifically counteract the use of American shotguns. Enemy troops began utilizing extended tunnel lengths beyond the shotgun's effective range and implementing obstacles to disrupt pellet spread. These adjustments compelled American assault teams to devise new strategies to regain their dominance in subterranean warfare. Stay with us and watch the end of this video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Also, leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. By March 15th, casualty data revealed that units using shotguns experienced considerably fewer losses during bunker clearing operations compared to those armed with rifles. McKinley's squad participated in 14 separate tunnel assaults, suffering no fatalities and only 3 minor injuries. These statistics stood in stark contrast to the typically high casualty rates associated with attacks on fortified positions. The weapon, initially a game-changer in jungle combat, was proving equally revolutionary in the urban battles of Iwo Jima. The effectiveness of trench guns in bunker operations spurred a surge in demand that outstripped supply. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson was forced to ration the weapons among various units, each asserting the operational importance of their respective missions. The once overlooked weapon from World War I had transformed into one of the most coveted arms in the Pacific Theater. Its utility validated across diverse combat scenarios that its creators had never imagined.